So everyone, while we stare at this Lobos Jr. lookalike, I wanted to say hello everyone and welcome. I'm going to take a look at the Nintendo Lair presentation for Yooka-Laylee in the Impossible Treehouse. So what they did was at E3, they showed a little bit more of the game. Harry and Gary were there to play the game for us and talk about it. Whether they're playing, whether they're talking. So I just had some, when I did the original video, I said a few things about how I think the game is going to go and how I think things are going to work together in tandem with each other, what wasn't going to be in the game, what was going to be in the game, and I've got a lot more answers. What are these answers that we're getting? So first off, the scanner thingy is indeed a checkpoint. It does indeed play very much like a Donkey Kong Country game, and I mean, of course it is going to do that, because a lot of people that work on this game worked on Donkey Kong Country games, so why shouldn't they take inspiration from their own work? If they decide that they can add their own spin to it and make it better, there's totally nothing wrong with that if they actually end up making a really great game, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what matters. We want to have great games. This looks pretty cool. So I also had some misconceptions about the ghost quills. I did call it there were different colors of quills that all do different things, and that collecting them was probably good. I thought those were the 5 collectibles that we saw from the overworld, but instead the 5 collectibles are just 5 coins. Maybe it could have been a bit more interesting than just 5 coins, but whatever. The ghost quills, though, however, they are indeed, like I thought, different kinds of challenges that are dependent on which color it is. But in this case, you get quills. And I actually really like what they did with quills in this game, because in Yooka-Laylee 1, and I know that this isn't Yooka-Laylee 2, but I'm just going to call the other one Yooka-Laylee 1 anyway, because you know what I mean with it. So in Yooka-Laylee 1, because it was a 3D adventure, in a 3D adventure, of course you are expected to collect every single one of the main collectibles, and I know there's that one quill that we all know about, that sort of made that whole a bit frustrating instead of satisfying. Like that was a problem with the main collectible in Yooka-Laylee 1. The main collectible, like the quills, they were more frustrating than they were satisfying, because they were some of these really weirdly hidden ones that you always wound up missing. But in this game, because it's a 2D platformer, you don't have to get all of the collectibles, and because you don't get all the collectibles, now the quills are a bonus, and now that they are a bonus, you can be showered with them. You can go out of your way to get more of them if you want to, or you cannot do that. You really want to just get to the end while collecting a bunch of quills, but how many you actually collect, how many you miss, none of that actually really matters. You can just play everything at your own pace, and the collection of quills now actually feels a lot more rewarding, because it's something that you decide to do. And if you find more quills than you did on another playthrough, that feels nicer, because now, oh my god, I've got more quills, nice. There's also kind of a currency now, so you can buy stuff with it on the overworld, so it still feels like you want to collect quills, you want to have as many quills as possible. So they do also have a really nice use, other than, well, if you get all of them, you get a pagey, and they get some moves, but I mean, you're gonna get the moves anyway, probably. So this is something that feels really nice to do, and I think this is gonna make collecting quills feel a lot more satisfying. And if you don't get them, it's a lot less frustrating than it was in Yooka-Laylee 1. So we see that the different quills, of course, they all do different things, although for the most part they all do something very similar, as in they all just spit out quills, just in different ways. The yellow one just sort of drops them on the ground. The purple one also does that, but it's a lot more, and there's a lot more chaos and everything. The blue one spawns them in a specific pattern that you have to collect, and they also move around. Like the blue one makes moving quills. The green one has quills that are in a line, and they're static, and you have to collect them in a certain time frame, stuff like that. So they're very simple. But that's okay, they don't need to be super crazy. In fact, if they were super crazy, maybe that would have detracted from collecting them, because it's supposed to be quick and fun. This is the thing, it's supposed to be quick and fun. If it was really weirdly difficult to get them, I think that wouldn't be very satisfying. So you also see a lot of secrets there. The secrets that we see over here, they are very easy to see in this presentation. They're all very easy. Like I've seen a lot of secrets that he's just running past, a ton of them, and also in the other stages I also see a ton of secrets that he's running past. I think this is because these are some of the earlier stages, and in the earlier stages, of course, not going to be that difficult. It's going to be rather simple instead to get all this stuff. I would assume in the later stages it's going to be a lot more difficult to actually find the secrets, although I still think that if you really open your eyes and try to look for them, you don't just rush through the stage, you're actually like, okay, take a second, take a breather, and actually look for the secrets. I think you're going to be able to find all of them still, even in later games, like you kind of did in Country Returns. So here we are on the overworld, and I want to mention a bunch of stuff about the overworld. So like I said in the original review that I did for this, it seems like the overworld isn't trying to compete with the 2D game. Because the 2D stages are kind of the actual gameplay, and this is sort of a side objective that you do to accompany the main gameplay. And as such, I think it feels really nice. It's something to take a breather in between stages, it's something to give you a palate cleanser, but it's also something else to do. What I also like is, you see that he's going to pick up stuff with his tongue here to throw at some other stuff. He's also going to pick up boxes. Now, picking up stuff with your tongue, like you're gonna see him, like you saw him pick up a fruit, and then he throws the fruit at an enemy, or you here in the overworld he gets like an exploding fruit, and he throws the exploding fruit at some like blocks, and the blocks disappear. It seems like in the 2D style, you still have the ability to like take fruit, pick it up, and throw it at enemies, throw it at the environment, and do stuff. But it seems like in the 3D adventure, that's like the main focus. This is the main thing that you do in the 3D adventure, is you use that for puzzling. You puzzle with exactly that ability in mind, and it's pretty much the center focus of everything. While in the 2D adventures, it's something you do kind of on the side. Like, yeah, you can fight enemies easier, maybe you can find a secret maybe, but you don't, it's not really that important to actually do that. So you also have the same gameplay aspect, the same gameplay mechanic, but in applied in different ways, in the different amounts of focus. I think I like that as well, that you still have the same mechanics, but they take on a little bit of a different idea between the two parts of the game. Also, something that I want to notice, this is something that's really weird. Notice what happens when he beats the first stage. Well, let's see where it is. So he beats the first stage, he comes out of the stage. Notice what happens. Yeah, or rather notice what doesn't happen. I don't know if he's already beaten the stage before, but something that I found a bit interesting is that we also see him beat a stage later, and it doesn't seem like it does anything. Unless I missed that part. I don't think I missed that part. Oh, they didn't even show him coming out of the stage for this one. Oh, come on. Yeah, they don't actually come out of the stage for this one. But does he come on stage? So what I want to mention is, it seems like when you actually leave the stage, nothing actually happens on the overworld, which makes me wonder if you actually need to beat any of the stages to go for the entire overworld. But here, nothing really happened. Absolutely nothing happened in the overworld after beating that stage. Now I know that you can beat the entire game pretty much immediately, which I love. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But talking just about the overworld, it seems like you could just walk through the overworld and unlock every single stage, unlock every single second half of the stage, without actually entering any of the stages. This is what it seemed like. It seemed like right now, if you wanted to, you could uncover the entire map. You could unlock everything. You don't have to enter any stage to do that. That's at least what it seemed like. It might be that there's some places where you do have to do some stuff. Like I see over there, see if they show it again. To the top here, I don't know if you see my mouse, there's a gate. It seems like a gate icon. Maybe in order to go through the gate, you need to have a certain amount of bees collected. But even so, even if that's the case, it seems like, or maybe you need to have a certain amount of coins, that might also be the case. Even so, it seems like you can still do a ton of stuff on the overworld without having to enter a stage, which I really like, because I love freedom. And that looks like a lot of freedom to me right there, that you can decide yourself how much of the 2D stages you want to do, and how much of the overworld you want to do, and when you want to do what. Love it. I love stuff like that. If that is indeed the way it works, absolutely love that. So also I want to mention this, the impossible lair is right there. Apparently that's where you start the game, so you can just instantly beat the entire game if you can just make it through the impossible lair. Now the way the game works with taking damage is that you have Yooka and Laylee together, but when you take damage, Laylee's kind of like Diddy Kong, she flies off. But in this game, you can actually still collect Laylee and get your health back, sort of, basically. And also, as long as you have Laylee, you actually have more abilities than you otherwise would. So it's actually really important to have her around. But because it seems really easy to maintain her, rather, and also there's like bells. It seemed to be there's quite a few bells, and you can probably like hit a bell, lose Laylee, and then go back to the same bell again, hit it again, and you get her back. So it seems like the game is sort of designed in the way that you are kind of meant to actually have Laylee in a lot of these instances. Like I assume you can still beat the entire game without Laylee, and if not, they would put a bell right next to the place where you need her. But I like that you actually are kind of meant to have her, and it's really easy to have her around all the time. But at the same time, you can lose her. She's kind of like your second life. And the way the impossible lair works, however, is I assume you still have that mechanic with Laylee, as in like you have a second hit with Laylee, and if you keep picking her up, you're basically invincible. But what the impossible lair is basically it's supposed to be so difficult, and it's going to be so many hazards and enemies and everything that just having Laylee is not enough. You're gonna need to be able to tank more hits, otherwise you just die, and there's no checkpoints, so you go back to the start of the game. So it seems like what they did was, and I really like this, so not only you can just beat the game at the start, but it's really difficult to do so, and the longer you play the game, the easier it becomes. Because when you beat a stage, you get, you free a bee, and the bee takes a hit for you in the impossible lair. So if you have got a bunch of bees, they will take a lot of hits for you, and you're going to be almost invincible going through the impossible lair. It's going to be really easy for you. And I really like that idea. They sort of took this from like Chrono Trigger, where you can beat the game like 2/5 of the way through the game if you want to, or from Breath of the Wild. Of course, Breath of the Wild is a lot more recent, so I think they took it also from that, where you start the game, go through a little bit of an intro maybe, but then you can just beat the game if you want to. But it's really difficult. Breath of the Wild, you can't just do that on your first playthrough, just go instantly to Ganon and beat him. You just can't really do that unless you bash your head into him for like multiple hours and hours on the same boss, and even then you probably gonna have just a very small chance. But I really like that they did that in this game as well, that you can actually like instantly beat the game, and I think I'm gonna do that. When this game comes out, because I pride myself on being able to beat very difficult content very quickly. Like when Death Wish came out in Hat in Time, which is basically like a Kaizo mode, where it's super duper difficult. Most people can't beat it, I think. And when that came out, I had like the world first completions for like 90% of the Death Wishes. Yeah, and then for like the last few, I kind of gave up. So I wasn't the first one to complete all of them, but yeah, at least I got like most of them. But I want to do this with this game. Like as soon as this game comes out, I want to say, okay, I'm gonna go in. I'm not gonna go any other stage unless I like have to. Like maybe there's like an intro stage you have to go through, but I'm not gonna beat more stages than I have to. As soon as I have access to the impossible lair, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna beat it. Even if it takes a few hours, I'm gonna do it because I believe in myself. I know I have the ability to do so. I got this, guys. But coming back to the game, I really like that they do that indeed with this idea that you can beat the game at the start. But it's not the only sort of like difficulty system that they have. They didn't talk about this, but we can actually see something right here if they go into the stage. Having very interesting. Okay, having trouble. So apparently you can actually get tonics to make things easier. But I have a feeling that this is not all that tonics do, because let me take a look at this. It's gonna happen in a second. Come on. You can throw items upwards. That's actually interesting. I didn't even know about that. I like loading screen tips. So right here, we see that there's a quill multiplier and 3 empty slots next to it. So what I think is going to happen in this game is, so they didn't talk about this, they didn't show Vendy, and I think the reason they didn't show Vendy is because this system that you see right now, I'm going to talk about the system as if I know what the system is, but I think the reason they didn't talk about this is because it's still up for debate, and they're not quite sure if this is the system they want to have. It's probably not even implemented yet. But what I assume the system would be is you go to Vendy, you maybe pay some quills, or you unlock it through some achievements, and you get tonics. And you take these tonics and you have 3 slots here. And then you slot a tonic into one of these empty slots. And what it does is, I would assume it either you have some tonics that make the game easier and some tonics that make the game harder. Let's say you have a tonic that's when you take a hit, it's not that Laylee flies off when you have to continue, but you instantly die, like as a one-hit tonic. And maybe it's like a tonic where there's a lot more enemies, or there's a tonic where there's no bells, or maybe there's also a tonic where you are invincible. I don't know. Maybe there's a tonic where if you fall down into a bottomless pit, you get set back to onto the stage right next to it, and it doesn't count as a death. Maybe there's stuff like that. So it seems like you can have tonics that make the game easier. I would assume also harder. And depending on what tonics you use, the quill multiplier changes. So if you make the game super easy for you, you get less quills. But if you make the game super hard for you, you get a lot more quills. Which I really like it when games do that, where you actually kind of get to choose and pick through some difficulty modifiers. Because I hate it when games just go easy mode, hard mode, and normal mode, maybe some other stuff. I usually don't like that, because you don't know what the fuck any of this actually means. Like, what does normal mode mean? What does the hard mode mean? Is it just enemies have more health? Because if enemies just have more health, I don't care. Like, what the... Oh. So I like it a lot more here, where it seems it's a bit more tangible. It's a lot more tangible what the difficulty actually is. And you also get more rewards for it. So you both get more rewards for it, and it becomes a lot more tangible what the difficulty actually means. This is something that I really like. Like I said, all of this seems still really far out there. We don't know if any of this actually works that way. So, like I said, take all this with a grain of salt. Something I want to mention, though, is about the presentation of the game. So you see, when you enter the stage, you sort of, like, the scanner just sort of scans you into existence. You sort of get teleported in. And I assume when you die and you get respawned to a checkpoint, I assume it also just scans you into existence on the checkpoint, like the exact same animation. I don't like that, because something that I personally value a lot is game feel. Sorry for the creaking, by the way. I need some WD-40. When you see this, it doesn't feel very dynamic or engaging or fun to just get teleported into a stage. Compare that to Donkey Country Returns. I haven't played it in like 5 years, but I think in Donkey Country Returns, if I remember correctly, a lot of stages when you start them, Donkey Kong will actually, like, from off screen jump onto the screen and enter the stage that way, which is a lot more of a dynamic entrance. Like, if it was a comic book, you would have like a speed drop that shouts dynamic entrance. This is kind of the stuff that I want more from this game, and also something that we see on a bunch of places where, for example, right here, look at, he's gonna do an attack with his tail. He's gonna do a tail swipe, and look what it, take a look at this. That looked very weak. That looked very, very weak. You know, in Yooka-Laylee 1, you had the colored trails. It was something. It was more than this. And I think in general, I want the game to lean a bit more heavily into that game feel aspect. Like the sort of stuff that makes a game feel awesome to play. Like imagine if you, like let's say you play a shoot 'em up game and you hit an enemy space fighter, and here's what's gonna happen is you shoot the space fighter and you hear this sound, just some small pop, and the space fighter just boop, disappears. Like someone selected it in an editor and hit the delete button. That's basically what it is like. So it's sort of like poops and it's gone. That feels really unsatisfying and unfulfilling. But now imagine you hear this sound. I don't know how loud that was. I hope that wasn't too loud. When the space fighter gets destroyed, and you also see some purple and red sparkles that fly up, maybe some fireworks that like fly up, some sparkles. That feels a lot nicer. That feels a lot nicer. And I think this is a lot more important when you have a more linear, constricted experience like this one. Like when you have an open environment, like in a 3D environment, a lot of the fun and enjoyment that you get comes from exploring the world. So I want to make sure the world is fun to explore. That is where you get a lot of enjoyment out in a 3D or open world, or just a more open environment and open experience. But when you have a more linear experience like this, I think you really should bank a lot more heavily into game feel. Make sure that what you do on screen sounds and feels satisfying. So for example, that tail swipe that he did, that looked really boring. I was like, what is he doing? Is his tail made of like plastic or whatever? I want, when he swings his tail, I want it to sound and feel like he's swinging a mighty sword and cutting through enemies. I know, that's pretty exaggerating, but you know what I mean. I want it to feel a lot more mighty than just, this is some white trail. Like, okay. Nice. And I think later on at some point, or earlier, he hit an enemy with that attack, and it didn't really do anything. Like right there, the box disappears, but it was just a bit of smoke. I don't know. Like this also, I also need to note this, that this game also, it has some places where it really does do stuff really nicely with the presentation and the game feel. Let's see if I can find it again. It was when he has, yeah, it's around here when he has the Sorbet following it, and then he gets to some other place. Oh, come on, this DLC. So when you see the colored quills, okay, you see the colored quills, and you have, I think it's right here. Yeah, you see the colored quills. They have the, like the sparkling tail when they have these quills coming out. You see these sparkles everywhere. It's like a firework. And then at the very end, when you've got all of the quills, or just when he disappears, he like explodes into fireworks. Like let's say, like, oh, look at that! Look at how amazing! Like, that is great game feel. That looks satisfying. When I look at that, I think to myself, I want to play that. But when I see him do the tail swipe, it's just a white trail. I'm like, I don't want to play that. So, like I said, for a linear experience, where I think you really need to lean a lot more heavily into that feedback. And I think this game has some really cool feedback, or not feedback, but game feel in some aspects, like the like the moving quills. But like the attack, it's a bit lacking in that aspect. So I think, like I said, in general, lean a bit more heavily into it, make sure that every single aspect has some sort of game feel to it. Of course, don't make everything a giant waterfall rainbow of colors that explode in your face. Like, of course, you still have to, like, pace yourself still, but still make sure that it feels awesome, and there's some really cool effects and everything that go along with it. Game feel, very important. That's what I want to talk about there. So let me see what else there was that I want to talk about. So Laylee indeed is the second half. You can do some other moves with Laylee. They mention a few of them here. I think it's mostly something with the roll. You can flutter. I think you can do the stomp as well. But it seems like you can still do most of the stuff even without that. So it doesn't seem to be that important to actually have that. I also want to talk about, oh yeah, so they come to this point and there's a bug and they can't pick up the key. I think people need to realize as well that when you develop a video game, I would say probably the last third of development, of programming rather, last third of programming probably, or the last fourth or fifth, depending on how much you need to do, is bug fixing and quality assurance. That is actually really important when you develop a game. Now, when you see a game like Anthem, or like 476, you know that when they cut corners on bug fixing and quality assurance. That's where they cut the corners. Of course, they cut corners on other aspects as well, but this is where it becomes really obvious. People want bug-free games, but you need to realize that fixing all of these bugs takes a lot of time, because a game is pretty complex. There's a lot of stuff going into it, a lot of stuff coming out of it, and everyone plays the game differently. It's really wild, actually. So bug fixing and quality assurance takes a long time, and this is why I know that when I watch a trailer and I don't see any gameplay, I get really mad. Like, why are they not showing gameplay? And I want every single trailer that I see to show gameplay, and not just pre-rendered gameplay where it's like, it's still a cutscene just rendered in-game. No, I want to see actual gameplay. Like, someone is sitting next to me with a controller in his hand playing the game. I want to see the HUD, the UI, and actually feel like someone is actually playing the game. And it's one step further is actually making a live performance out of it, basically, where you show the game off to a wide audience. But of course, if you do that, like I said, since there's still a lot of quality assurance and bug fixing going on, of course there's going to be bugs. It's not nice to see, definitely not nice to see, but I think Playtonic has a pretty good track record with actually fixing bugs when they were pointed out to them, because for Yooka-Laylee 1 they did the toy box, and in the toy box there were a few problems with it, a few bugs, and we did indeed talk to Playtonic about it, and we did say, okay, here's some bugs, you can do this, and then some weird stuff happens. And they fixed pretty much all of the stuff that was adversarial to the game experience. They made sure that all the bugs that could do some weird stuff that players would not like, all of that stuff was fixed. They fixed all of that. So I do think to myself that now that they saw this bug happening right there, it's definitely going to fix that bug. They're going to fix everything else that they see in this that didn't quite work as well. Because I think this is the Platonic are the kind of guys where if they have something pointed out to them, they will indeed fix the bugs and make it better. I think that's exactly what they're going to do. So also something to note is, well, I want to go back to this again to the impossible layer. So the impossible layer is of course going to be amazing for speedruns, because in a speedrun you're just going to go straight to the impossible layer and you're just going to beat it. So I assume there's going to be two major categories, like 100% or like at least the 48 Bs, and there's going to be just any percent, which is any percent where we just start the game up, beat the impossible layer, done. It's going to be really amazing to do, and I'm definitely going to go hard on that, unless the final boss fight takes like 20 minutes, then maybe not, but I'm going to see what I can do with that. So yeah, this is it for the most part. I have to say I don't like the fact that the 5 collectibles are just coins. I mean, for how much charm and humor that Yooka-Laylee has and the developers have, I find it a bit weird that it's really just 5 coins, because that seems really straightforward and simple and not very interesting. With how many puns they have, how much charm everything has, how cool the enemies look, how even the quills have personalities. I find it really weird that it's just 5 coins. Maybe this, I don't know if it's placeholder. I don't think it's placeholder, but still, I find it a bit weird. We also have the pages, by the way. It seems like the pages are just there to sort of unlock more stages. So you unlock more stages with the pages, and then you do some additional puzzling to get the second part of the stage ready to go. One thing I wanted to note about the different stage designs, or the expansions basically, where in Yooka-Laylee 1, what you had is, you had the expansion, and I know a lot of people, being included, were a little bit let down with the expansions, because we were thinking that maybe when you do the expansion, it changes something really fundamental about the original stage, where the original content is still there, but now you've got this new spin on everything. And now you get to do some really cool stuff. Like I theorized that maybe there's a stage where you have a lot of electrical stuff going on, like you have machines, and the machines don't work. And that's, you just go through the stage, the machines don't work. You expand the stage, all that happens is it opens a room where it's like a generator, and then you hit the generator, and now you have the ability to turn on machines. And not just that, you can like turn on and off certain things, and depending on what you turn on, when you turn it on, maybe there's like moving platforms that you turn it on and then you turn it off again when the platform is at the right spot, maybe stuff like that, where you now actually have the ability to control the stage and make some really cool stuff happen. I was hoping with more stuff like that in Yooka-Laylee 1. We kind of had a little bit like that with Nimbo in the first stage, where in Tropics Like Tropics, where you could have the water come in and you could freeze the water. I like that. I would really hope more stuff like that to happen, instead of just like a bit more content to play through. That felt a bit like it wasn't using that mechanic to its full potential, so we didn't really like that. But in this case, now that they say, okay, we're going to change the entire stage, and you're going to have 2 versions of the stage, the regular version and the changed version. Now they don't have to be like, well, we can't change that much about the stage because the original content needs to still be accessible, right? We can't make the original content inaccessible. That would be, we can't do that now. So we have to make sure that the changes that we do aren't too big. But now that the other stage, the change stage, is its own stage, they can go completely wild. They say one stage floods, they say another stage like turns from sideways to upwards. I hope they actually really go crazy with this, and I want to mention that usually I would say, if you think you've got something good, play the rest safe, but no. Go crazy with this. Go absolutely crazy, go absolutely bonkers with this idea. I was thinking... Oh, sorry guys. I was thinking that, let's say you have a stage, like let's say you have a stage that's filled with water. Imagine there's some wooden structures on the ground, and when you fill the stage with water, the structures rise up and they float on the water. That's pretty cool, right? But imagine this. Below the structures where they were sitting, there was a cave that was blocked by the wooden structures that were sitting on top of it. So now that the wooden structures are floating, that cave below there is now open, and you can swim into that cave, and you got an underwater cave that you haven't been to before in the other stage, and it feels like, oh, that cave was always there, but you just couldn't get to it in the original part of the stage. But now in the second part, you get to explore completely new parts of the stage. And this would be really cool. Like, I want them to go really crazy with it, make some absolutely amazing, mind-blowing stuff that like completely blows your bonkers out. I really hope something like that happens, and they lean really crazily into that. Hope all of that is indeed the case. Also, by the way, I want to mention this. I was calling her Queen Bee. I know she's now called Queen Phoebe. I was doing my initial video. When I did my initial video, we didn't have that information yet, but now we do. It's called Queen Phoebe. But yeah. That was it for the most part. I like the stage design in general. I hope my boy Hamish is working on the stage design as well, on the just in general some of the design. I know we can do some cool stuff. I know in general the peeps at Playtonic, they definitely have the chops to make some great 2D platformers. Just looking at this, they actually see a lot more gameplay here of what the game is going to be looking like compared to Yooka-Laylee 1. I know Yooka-Laylee 1, we had that preview of Casino Royale. Some people didn't like it, but here everything that I see, I really like everything that I see here, so I'm confident this is going to be a good game. Just in general, like I said, make sure the game feel is a bit nice. Like here, when he opens this, you do get the explosion, but I think that like you have like two halves to the explosion. At first, everything like slows down, and then you see it like popping out a bit, and then suddenly color happens, and then suddenly sparkles happen. I would like a lot more if the first half of that animation was already a bit more celebratory, because when I first saw the animation, I was just like, eh? And then suddenly colors, and I was like, oh. So maybe the first part of the animation could look better. When you do the roll has a really long startup on the animation. Like, it seems like half the animation for the roll is just the startup. That feels a bit weird. I also don't know if you can continuously roll without having to restart the roll. I assume you can actually do that. I assume you can actually continuously roll without having to restart if you have Laylee with you. Otherwise, it would be really weird. But yeah, the startup is a bit slow on the animation. I just speed the animation up for the first bit. Stuff like that. Like, it's like, this is the thing that I have to say about the game so far, is that the game, when I look at the game, I see plenty of places where I think to myself, this could maybe look a bit more like game feel. Like, it sounds weird talking about game feel, but I think this should feel more satisfying, because I'm not playing the game right now, but just from looking, I can usually look at something and tell you if this is something that feels good to play or not, or like feels satisfying to play. And like I said, animations and sound effects are a big part of that, and I hope they lean a bit more into that and make sure that it feels more satisfying to play. And yeah, that's basically it. Work on that for the most part. I would say something. I want to say the graphics need some polishing, but I don't actually care. Like, this is something that's always like, well, if I reviewed this game and it was like a 96 out of 100, I would give it 100 out of 100 if it had better graphics. Like, at the end of the day, it's still just like 4 points of rating compared to the 80 points that I give to gameplay. Like, if I were to rate a game, 80% of the game is gameplay. Like, that's just the gameplay. If the gameplay is fine, like, if it doesn't look that great, I don't care, dude. I don't really care. Just make sure the gameplay is fun. That's all I really care for about. Make the gameplay fun, and the gameplay here looks quite fun. Although I'm talking about this with the speedrunning as well. It's hard to judge exactly how well movement is gonna work if you do this in a speedrun. Like, if we go to one of the stages again, when you roll, you do of course speed up, but we don't know if there's maybe an animation lock on rolling, if the startup of the roll takes too long for it to be worth it, other than maybe some other type of movement we don't know about. Like, when you speedrun a game, or when you go to speedrun a game, sometimes you find ways of moving that are really awkward, but are just a little bit faster. Or maybe you find different routes with like, hey, on this route, if we take this route for the level, we can roll more, and because we can roll more, it's actually faster, even though the route that we travel is a bit longer. Stuff like that. So it's a bit hard to judge exactly how well this is going to work in a speedrun. Also, it seems like you kind of need quills to continue on with the game, or at least to unlock all the stages. Like if we say that the second half of stages also need to be unlocked if we're gonna do like a full playthrough of the game. So maybe that's like a category of the game that's just like only the first halves of each stage. But it seems like for that one part where he paid like 1,000 quills to get a key, that was to unlock the second half of the stage. So maybe you only really need to pay big amounts of quills for the second half of stages. We don't know, but it seemed like that might be a thing. So that might also be something to consider for the speedrun, that collecting quills might be really important if you're gonna get all the second halves as well. But if you don't do that, maybe quills aren't that important. And there's also something to note when you do like a casual playthrough as well, where you need to figure out yourself how hard do you want to go on the quill collecting, or what do you want to do with that. Maybe you want to collect quills by taking all the tonics and making the stage really difficult and get a good multiplier, which once again is up to debate. I don't know if that's a thing. But yeah, I think that's mostly about everything I wanted to talk about. Let me just very quickly check. The level design is fine. Like, I don't mind the level design for both the overworld or the levels. It seems really nice. It has some visually, it looks nice. Like I said, when I say better graphics, I mean like better graphics from a technical standpoint, like from a technology standpoint. Like imagine going to settings and cranking up the graphics settings a bit more or something like that, and not the actual visual style. Like style-wise, I really like the visual. Like style-wise, the visuals are really nice. I like that. So in that case, it's really nice as well. We also have some more NPCs here that we don't really seem to interact with. I mean, of course, there's Rampo, who's going to flood the stage. I really like that as well, that we're going to have some doing stuff here on the overworld is going to affect some of the stages. Like I said, unlocking the second half. There's a portal up there, it seems like. There's some stuff where we can't quite make out exactly what any of this really means. We can only just speculate, so there's not really a whole lot more to go on about. But yeah, that was mostly about it. Everything that I was thinking about with this game. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you Harry and Gary for playing the game and talking about it. Thank you everyone at Playtonic. Thank you Hamish for being a cool dude. And just everyone at Playtonic in general. And yeah, that was, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If there's anything you want to talk about, leave a comment below, because that's the way I read stuff. I don't go to anywhere but my comments. If there's something you want me to take a specific look about, or if there's something you want me to talk about specifically, yeah, just tell me in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as they're gonna go back to the what I was doing looking like in a second. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.